Now, time for business, and the European Union is set to unveil a major overhaul of the rules it uses to police digital giants such as Google and Facebook. The Commission says two new draft laws will update its toolbox when it comes to regulating the world's biggest technology firms. Let's get more from our business editor, Stephen Carroll. Stephen, what do we know about these new rules?
It's going to be the biggest overhaul of the European rules around technology and digital services in 20 years, or at least that's what's been promised by the European Commission. They're going to unveil the full details later, but we know there's going to be two draft laws proposed by the Commission. The first is the Digital Markets Act, which is aimed at trying to stop anti-competitive behaviour in the digital world, and the other is the Digital Services Act, and that seeks to make technology companies, those tech giants, more responsible for any illegal behaviour that might happen on their platforms. That could be to do with moderating illegal content, with stopping disinformation spreading on platforms, stop counterfeit goods being sold on platforms, and these new rules will come with new penalties. The Digital Markets Act will allow for penalties of up to 10% of a company's global revenues if they're found in breach, and the Digital Services Act penalties of up to 6% of global revenues, figures that we're talking about in the billions and billions of euros. They're only going to be applied to the biggest technology companies, those with over 45 million users. There are around 10 companies were expected to be designated gatekeepers under the EU Commission's language. They're all the big technology companies you can think of. Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, for example, would all fall into these categories. So it's only going to apply to those biggest companies, but it would represent a fairly significant step forward in how the EU deals with these companies, which are of course mostly American companies, but regulation has been something that's been quite challenging for the EU to do. We know there have been lots of high profile cases. One other interesting stick in these new laws would be that if companies are designated repeat offenders to break the rules of the Digital Markets Act for 3 times in 5 years, then the EU could order that they be broken up, and that would be a major new power the EU would get. These, of course, will be draft laws, and the ratification may see changes to them.
Now, Stephen, the EU has fined technology companies billions in the past for bad behaviour. Are these rules likely to make much of a difference, however?
It really depends on what form they finish up in when they've finished the ratification process of going through the other EU institutions and ending up on the books as law. So there is a time, and it may be a very long process as well, of getting it through, for example, the European Parliament, that could see changes, perhaps elements of this draft law being watered down. So that will be the key element to watch in all of this. For the European Commission's part, they say that they simply need new tools to deal with a rapidly evolving digital market. Although there have been these massive fines, you know, if we think about Google just as one example, it's been fined more than 8 billion euros by the European Commission over a series of competition cases, but these cases take a very long time. They take many, many years for the investigation to be completed, and then there's an appeals process afterwards. And some commentators say that that really means these rules aren't very effective. The companies can pay up, but it doesn't lead to major changes in behaviour, and that's what the EU is trying to change with these new rules when they come into force. Just to give you an example, though, of how complicated this can be, just today, Twitter has become the first big technology company to be fined under the EU's data protection rules, the GDPR, that came into force in 2018. It's the Irish Data Protection Commissioner that's fined them €450,000, and that's for publicly publishing tweets which were supposed to be private. That's something that the first case that we've seen tackling one of these big tech giants through one of the European regulators. So it's not a simple process, and it can take a very long time to come to fruition.
Now, in the meantime, the social media site Pinterest has paid a record settlement to a former executive after she claimed she was being discriminated because of her gender. What more can you tell us?
It's $22.5 million that Pinterest is paying to settle this case taken by its former chief operating officer, Françoise Bruguière. Now, she had taken a case against the company in August of this year. She said that she was fired because of the discrimination related to her gender. She said that she had been excluded from meetings when bringing up the issue, after having brought up the issue of equal pay, and had raised concerns about sexist comments that were made by colleagues of hers. Her legal complaint said that the move to fire her had solidified what she called Pinterest's unwelcoming environment for women and minorities. This in a company where the majority of users are women, and that's something that was brought up in the legal case as well. The settlement will see that money being paid to both Françoise Bruguière, but also $2.5 million of it will go to organisations which support women and minorities in the tech sector. In a statement, a joint statement from the company and Françoise Bruguière, Pinterest said that it recognised the importance of fostering a workplace environment that is diverse, equitable and inclusive, while Françoise Bruguière said she welcomed the meaningful steps that Pinterest has taken to improve its workplace. One of the key things about this, and Annette, I know it's a subject that you've covered a lot in the 51% as well, is the fact that this is a public settlement. This is now on the record, and that's why we're calling it a record settlement, this $22.5 million. Many cases like this are settled in private, and there's a hope that the public nature of this settlement will help to stop other cases like this emerging in the future.
It certainly looks like it's set to become a legal benchmark. Stephen, just take us through now what's happening on the markets.
It's a mixed picture on European markets today. We've got that optimism around coronavirus vaccines, but worries about the increased cases of the virus and the new lockdown measures coming into place in several parts of Europe. London's FTSE 100 trading in the red this lunchtime, but there are some small gains on the CAC 40 in Paris and on the DAX in Frankfurt as well.
Stephen Carroll there, our business editor. Thank you for that wrap. And that's it for this edition. I'll be back after a short break. Do stay with us here on France 24.